Hi, everyone. Welcome back to an important webinar. Important information that we all need and what's so important? Because it changes almost every day now. So we're talking about protecting your book, your work, your creative, your intellectual property, and just all kinds of tidbits. Now, Dan and I, our presenter, Dan Miller, and I had done a podcast, and I was taking notes like cuckoo crazy. And we didn't even have slides. You have a boatload of slides. We are recording. You will get a full copy, and then all the slides will be on here. Dan talks fast, so let me tell you, we'll be going through all of them. But what I need to know from all of you, and Dan, just speak up so we can hear you.
Will do.
Okay, no, I just say hello to everyone so
Hello.
they can. All right, okay. All right, now everyone, how about letting us know that you can hear us? And two, tell us, go to the question box, the chat box, and go in there and tell us where you're from. Hi, Jeanette. She's from Colorado, and she writes business books and historical fiction. All right, so do that kind of thing. So she's from Denver, and I happen to know her, and she does historical fiction and great business books. All right, who else is with us? All right, hi, Doris. How are you? Kathleen is with us, and she does some metaphysical, and she's from New Age, and she is from Colorado too. Hi, Marion. Marion is from the great state of Texas. Ellen is from Denver, and Ellen has a new book coming out called Loosen Their Lips, Dan. So it's all about communication and competitive intelligence. All right, who else is with us today? I know we have several more people. All right, we have a shy group. All right, Marion's book is a nutritional book. She's writing nutrition. All right, Dan, we're ready for you to take over, everyone. Dan is the author of, and I want him to hold up his book. It's a big book. So it's copywriting for the creatives is the last word. I can't read it. He's got to hold it right up. Hold it to the camera, Dan. All right. Copyright clearance for creatives. So that's a book that could be, this is not going to be your bedside reading, but it is your reference and doing it up. And there's always updates. And he's also known as the copyright detective. So, and that is his website, copyrightdetective.com. And with that, we have a lot to cover, and I just want Dan to jump in. So if you have questions, just start putting them in. We'll have time at the end, but if I think it's relative and irrelevant, and as we go through here, Dan, I'm going to go ahead and ask questions for people as they come up, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
All right, ready to go. Up to you.
All right, so I'm trying to figure out how to get the webinar view box smaller here.
Why do you want to do that?
Oh, that's blocking some of my screen. Okay, let's see if this thing will drive. It doesn't want to. Okay.
All right, so you got to click your cursor in there, either click your mouse to make it drive or how, I don't know what you, there you go. All right.
Very good, very good. Okay, well, first of all, thanks for the opportunity, Judith, to talk on this topic. It's kind of consumed me for the last 5 months after I got an invitation to do this. I've been presenting on copyright since 2010, but it's the first time I've really gotten into the whole AI piece. So let me start out with a disclaimer. I am not an attorney. So information in this presentation, I believe it's correct. At least it was correct as of 10 minutes ago. And it's intended to contribute to your copyright literacy. It's not legal advice. If you need legal advice, consult an attorney. That's what I do. There is a need for a deep philosophical discussion, and I see that on LinkedIn all the time. But this presentation is not it. This is an explanation of some of the possibilities and the challenges that AI offers us today. So it'll be a lot of fact-based and not philosophy-based, if you will. Here's an acknowledgement of how I've used AI in actually putting together this presentation. So I used Google's AI, ChatGPT, Perplexity AI, Canva. So the slides are both AI generated and AI assisted. So that's two terms that I'm wanting you to latch on to because it's key to understanding the whole copyrightability issue. Typically, AI generated materials are not copyrightable. So that's an example of when you start with a prompt and you're only using prompts to refine the image. AI assisted materials, on the other hand, may or may not be copyrightable. So copyrightability is determined on a case-by-case basis, depending on the amount of creativity, originality, control, etc. And here are ways that I use AI to actually create this presentation. So I use it to identify templates. Then I did an outline for the presentation, which has vastly changed. It changed 5 slides in the last 2 days. A description of the presentation that actually ended up being pretty good, so I used that. Topics for the slides, content for slides, artwork, you'll see a lot of that, and then fact checking. Here are my objectives. So I am hoping that participants will be able to make more informed decisions before using either AI generated or AI assisted content in their works. And then I hope that the participants will be able to identify different uses of AI and how that will impact the copyrightability of what they publish. So I'm going to divide this up into 3 parts. First part, copyright and AI basics. After the first presentation, I realized that there was not enough context on the copyright side, so I've added that right off the bat. Then we'll look at the intersection of copyright and AI, and then lastly on impacts in the creative industries. So part 1, copyright and AI basics. The whole legal premise on copyright is to provide incentive to create. So that's what the whole thing is. So you get a legal monopoly for a period of time, and it's your life plus X number of years, depending on when it was published, to give you an incentive to actually create. Copyright law grants exclusive rights to authors of original works of authorship. And these are the rights that we're looking at and that are being challenged by AI platforms today. So the right to reproduce it, to adapt and make derivative works, to distribute copies to the public, to perform publicly as in a dramatic work, to display publicly as an artwork. There's a lot of art you're going to see in these slides. And then transmit digital sound recordings. So copyright infringement occurs when any of these exclusive rights are violated. And there are a lot of people who consider AI-generated outputs to be derivative works, which is one of the things that you are guaranteed if you copyright your work. So AI-generated outputs are viewed as being derivatives, and that could be copyright infringement. Now, the key is to exercise your rights. It's not enough to actually create something, but you have to actually exercise your rights. So a few years ago, there was a court decision that indicated that copyright owners must obtain a registration certificate before they can file a copyright infringement lawsuit. So that's a key now. So people are asking, what can I do to protect my work? Well, first thing is you need to register the copyright on whatever it is. Otherwise, you cannot bring a lawsuit. Fair use. This is a key, and the most recent document that just came out a few days ago out of the U.S. Copyright Office goes into the whole idea of fair use. And I'm going to talk a lot about fair use and whether AI is fair use or not. So fair use is a doctrine used in defense. So fair use is decided by a judge. And there's nothing that says you can use X number of words or you can use whatever. It doesn't exist, but if you're doing commentaries, criticisms, news reporting, scholarly reports, those are typical uses of they're declared fair use, if you will. Now, the AI piece adds a lot of complexity to this whole issue. So the courts weigh 4 factors. Purpose and character of the use. That's a key. And you remember back in 2015 that Google digitized millions of books without permission, without compensation. went all the way through the courts to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided that a searchable database was transformative, therefore it was fair use. So that kind of set precedent, and that's what the AI platforms are going to be measured against already, and you'll see a lot of this as we go forward. What's the nature of the work? If it's a poem, it's short, it might have 10 lines. It's not the quantity, if you will, and that's the other thing. So how much of somebody's work are you using? If you're using an entire poem, if you're using one line, if you're using a chapter, so that weighs in, but not as much as the purpose and character or the nature of the work. And then lastly, the effect on the market. So if AI uses your content, are you deprived of income in any way, shape, or form? And the first case has already come forward for that, and this just happened in February. So as Judith said, stuff is happening rapidly. And like I say, I had to modify 5 slides over the last few days because of things that have happened. So Reuters sued Ross. Ross actually was using the Reuters database to create a competitive search platform, and it went through the courts. Reuters actually bankrupted Ross with a lawsuit, so Ross is out of business, but the courts rejected the fair use claim, and that's the first one where we've seen an AI platform through the court system and actually lost its claim of fair use. So that's the first out of 40 cases that are have been in the queue. So what does generative AI do? Good question. So part of what it does, it generates text, images, audio, video, code, computer code, and it's really good at computer code, evidently. Here's some uses in publishing, and these are positive uses that won't get you in trouble with copyright infringement typically. So brainstorming and idea generation, research and fact checking. When I have a client, I use AI 20, 30 times a day to do research and fact checking. I'm trying to identify rights holders, contact information, etc. Generating drafts, outlines, summaries. It also is helpful in making content more engaging, more targeted toward the audience that you have. Marketing is a great way to use AI. There's not any copyright issues unless you're infringing somebody else's direct copyrighted material. But marketing is a great way to use AI. Automated enhanced editing. And I'll talk a lot about editing as we go through. Then suggesting social media strategies and content for your strategies. How does AI work? The training phase, and you'll hear a lot about training. So this is when they're using other people's stuff to create their database. So the training phase, so they gather massive data sets, and these are huge. I was looking up the energy consumption of these AI platform centers. It's just phenomenal how much power. And they're looking at using small nuclear reactors as a possible way to provide power to these things. They're such power hogs. They clean it, format it, process it. So I like to think of this as a wood chipper. So they feed everything into a wood chipper, it breaks it up into little chips, and then they identify each of those chips with a number. So the number red has a number somewhere in a database associated with that. Then they're going to analyze the data sets for patterns, distribution, relationships, and structures. And I'll show you some of those as we go through. Training on text. Where do they get their text? Books, excerpts, full text, anything that is digitized is the right answer. Websites, your blogs, company websites, and I'll use our own company website as an example in just a second. Social media, your Twitter, your Facebook, everything you have on Facebook has been scraped and it's sitting in databases. Your picture of Aunt Sally is in there somewhere. News articles, diverse news outlets, and all of those kinds of things. And that was the Reuters one, is the news outlets.
But,
academic research.
Dan, are you able to expand a little bit more? That kind of swooped by me really fast. What happened with Reuters? What was the challenge? And
Ross scraped all of their news feed, all their content from Reuters, and they were going to create an alternative delivery mechanism. Instead of going to Reuters, you go to Ross and get your information. So it was they were was a direct competition. So that was a no-brainer in terms of that not being fair use. They didn't have a chance from the get-go
So the
for that.
court ruled in favor of
Of
Bloomberg,
Reuters,
of
of
Reuters.
Reuters. Yeah, it was their stuff, and Ross basically stole all of it. They copyrighted, infringed everything.
They
Because
did. Right.
they were going to be a
All right.
direct competitor.
So I have another interrupt question. I hate to do this. I didn't see it, but Ellen wants to know if you would explain what a derivative is.
Uh, you have a book, you have characters in a book, and you write a second book using some of those same characters and some of those
Yep.
same backgrounds and everything. So that's a
Yep.
derivative. So it's based on a lot of a previously existing work. So that's the easiest way I can to explain it. So
So this is of the author's work. This
yes,
refers to the
yes,
author's work, Ellen. So like for win-lose, your original, or win-loss, your original book, what did you carry into your next book? That becomes part of the derivative,
yes.
if I formation on that. For those of you
Sherlock,
who write, yeah, Sherlock Holmes, the ongoing characters and
yes,
their
exactly.
habits and
Right,
experiences that all of a sudden bubble up into another book
right,
series.
right.
Okay. All right, we're ready to move on. Okay.
All right. Forums, message boards, so if you can find it online, it's been scraped and it sits in databases. LinkedIn has its own AI platform, believe it or not, and they do all their own stuff for that, but LinkedIn does have its own AI platform.
Okay, when you say
Public
they
domain.
did all the wrong, wait a minute, when you say they did all the wrong stuff, what was that? What would be wrong?
What? I've lost the context.
You said
You need to back
LinkedIn
up a little
has
bit.
it. Yep,
Oh, LinkedIn. Yeah, I just
LinkedIn
said
has its own AI platform and they did all the wrong stuff.
no,
What would that
that's
mean?
not what I said. No, so AI has its own AI platform.
Yes.
Stop, full stop.
Yeah.
Sorry to confuse.
Okay.
Uh, so the last thing I was talking about was public domain content. So anything that's in the public domain is
Mhm.
fair game, and you can use anything that's in the public domain yourself as well in your book. And I'm going to speak more later on about public domain.
Okay.
Website example. Now here's one that I put in a prompt, and I'm going to talk about a lot about prompts. I use Perplexity Pro as my go-to. So I put in Perplexity Pro, write content for a homepage describing copyright clearance, consulting, and services. I was just curious to see what would happen. So that's what I put in. Lo and behold, our website is showing up as the first items in that. Now, if you think about it, every website in the world has been scraped, and our website is showing up in this AI platform. I felt pretty good about that. And actually, we had 3 out of 5 of the top sources were our website. So how did I feel about it? I felt pretty good that I was recognized and I rose to the surface. However,
I would too.
yeah, if they'd have copied me though and quoted and taken
Yeah.
my website, I would not feel very good about that. Now, they did not.
Yeah.
And I like the format of how they summarize and use bullet points. I actually changed the format of our website because it's supposed to be a lot more consumable. So it's AI is a double-edged sword, and you never know which blade you're going to get caught by. Training on images. Where do they get their images? Web crawling. Any image found on the internet. Sally is in there somewhere. User generated. So Getty Images creates personalized images. So Getty is one that, they're using their own stuff that people submit for that. Licensed and purchased. And licensing is one of the keys to the future, but it's problematic. So I chose not to even talk about the whole licensing issue because there's no clean answer as far as I can see so far. Public domain, again, there are millions of images that are out there in the Library of Congress. Creative Commons, Wikimedia, all of those, again, it's on the internet, therefore it's been scraped. And then open licenses is another whole area, just to name a few. If it's digitized, it's been captured. Here's an example of one that I put in a prompt. So this is AI generated by ChatGPT. All it is, put in a prompt, and the prompt is picture of Vermont apple cider donuts. Well, somewhere in this vast trove of images, there's a lot of apples out there, and there's a lot of donuts, and there's a lot of wood and leaves and everything else. You'll notice one error. If you look at the jug at the top, it says Vermont AP. So it's one of these AI anomalies that you get where things are not clean. And a lot of times I could never get a clean image of whatever I'm looking for. Now, this one I used in Perplexity, and I discovered something. I actually submitted this slide deck for copyright, and it is copyrighted, by the way. The slides and my narrative did go through the whole registration process. So one of the things that Perplexity and other platforms do is they will go out and do a new scrape, if you will. They'll go out and just do a search on their own, and they will pull images that they pulled from websites. So initially, I didn't realize what was going on. So you notice where I have the word, I have RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. So you have to be careful of the outputs, because those images that are under those grayed out areas were actually pulled off of people's websites. So that would clearly be copyright infringement. If I had left those images under there, I would be violating a copyright of all those the web platforms that had those images. So be careful. How does AI work? The generative phase, this is the output phase. You're not as concerned about what goes in unless they're taking your stuff, but what comes out. So you enter a prompt. It can either be a positive or a negative prompt. I'm going to talk more about prompts. AI generates new content. That's why I put new in quotes. It's a lot of other people's stuff content. Then you can follow up with and prompts. So you can dive deeper into whatever it is. You can do refinements, etc. Now, what do you do with a prompt? Well, you need to be specific in terms of what you're looking for. So you're writing the instructions, if you will, on what you want AI to do. So you provide a context if that's appropriate, define the task, provide clear instructions, and I'll have some examples of that as we go through. Identify your target audience if that's appropriate. What not to include, and then you can refine it with and prompts. So that's the right terminology. It's an and prompt. So here's an example that came out of Part 2 copyrightability. The U.S. Copyright Office created that prompt, and you look at all the details that left: foggy, wet, stormy, it just goes on and on and on. Created that image. It looks pretty good until you get down to where the arrow was pointing. So that's an example of AI not quite being there yet. So the cat has a human hand. Everything else looks pretty reasonable on that. But that hand is not. And you have to count the fingers and toes. That's something else. And how many arms someone has. So it's still doing those kinds of weird things. Hallucinations. If you do not remember anything else, I want you to remember AI hallucinations.
Right.
It does some weird things. So it's false information that may sound plausible. And here's one I found on LinkedIn. It's the best example. I've gone back and tested it, and every time I do it, I get different hallucinations. So this is a post that was shared on there. So the prompt was the shortest capital city name, and notice this capital city with the shortest name is Baku, and it's with 3 letters. And then it's got another capital there, also with 3 letters. And then this shortest U.S. capital, Montpelier, Vermont. Well, Dover, Delaware, I think it's a whole lot shorter than that. So, that would just have multiple errors in it, all of which could sound plausible. So I'll go back, and I don't think I have the words actually on any of the slides, but it goes back to what Ronald Reagan said when he's looking at getting rid of nuclear weapons. Trust but verify. So I always look at the sources when I'm getting some information from an AI platform. I verify it and I go back to the original. Now, what can it be caused by?
So is another word for hallucination a phrase made up stuff?
Could be.
Okay.
And I understand they will just make up something sometimes, just out of the blue. So what could be caused? Insufficient training data. Well, they've scraped everything that's been digitized, but I don't know how much more they need. Incorrect assumptions. Now that's a programming issue in there. So when they're doing the algorithms, someone may not have gotten the code right. Here's what I love: AI models lack of real world understanding. How could it ever have real world understanding? It's a machine. So I don't really understand that. But Google says that's one of the causes, and I understand they'll never have real world understanding. And then biases, and there are biases galore. So think about it this way: AI generated content will reflect the biases of the content in which it was trained on. So any biases that are out there, it's built in: racial, gender, age, ability, cultural linguistics, socioeconomic, religious, any kind of bias you can think of is baked into the system because that's what was actually trained on. Now, I love this one. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. Here's an example. So I wrote this AI product, and I did this several times to see what would happen on different platforms. So write a children's picture book about a tomato named Tommy who comes of age. Seems pretty straightforward. I did this multiple times. That every time I did it, the story ended up with the tomato getting eaten. So I thought, okay, well, let me write a prompt that's appropriate to what that content is. So create an image of a children's book with vegetables, including a round tomato with faces in the salad bowl screaming at terror. And I really liked that image. I thought that captures the prompt very well for that. So just because I could create this, I would traumatize every child. They never eat a salad again as long as they live. So be careful of what you wish for. Part 2. Intersection of copyright. Now this is where it gets, put your seatbelts on now, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to enter turbulence. There are 3 major documents that have come out in the last several months, and one of them came out the 9th of May, which was what, last week for that. So the decision, I need to back up and tell you how copyright actually works. So Congress passes a law, the president signs it into law, and there are multiple copyright laws that are out there and all kinds of court cases and everything else. So just determining whether something is under copyright is a challenge. That's why we call ourselves a copyright detective. So then the U.S. Copyright Office, up until now, has been charged with administering the law. So they do it through registration, if you register your copyright, through policies, rulemaking, and then they give advice back to Congress. And then lastly, courts rule on the decisions made by the U.S. Copyright Office. So the U.S. Supreme Court makes a final decision, and it either goes back to Congress or it goes back to the U.S. Copyright Office. Now, here's the first of these documents. It came out last July. It deals with digital replicas. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. So this addresses the use of digital technology to realistically replicate an individual's voice or appearance. And it recommended new federal laws. And one of those federal laws was just signed on the 19th. Today is the 21st. So 3 days ago, that's how quickly this stuff is changing. So I had to modify the slide when this came out, but it's an act. And this deals with things like revenge porn and those kind of things. So that's about as far as I will dig into that one. But anyway, the laws are starting to happen. That will happen fairly quickly. Now, I use AI to get summaries for me. It's a good way to summarize. Now, I sit down and read. I did not read this one, I will admit. I read the other 2 documents that I'm about to show you and hundreds of other pages. But this one I got, and this came out of Google. So Google actually gave me, and Google has made a change. I think they're about to go wide with their AI platform that they have when you do a Google search. So I just saw an announcement on that. But yeah, I'll ask it. I put in a prompt, what are the major points in a big document like this? This is a 100-page document with lots of footnotes. So it gives me a summary. So that's useful. I look at that and I compare what I think it said versus what the AI platform. And a lot of times I'll run the same question through multiple platforms to see what their answers will be different a lot of times. So we're dealing with copyrightability. That's part 2. And that's the key to this whole thing. And that was released on January the 29th. And in this document, it has the key policies, rules, and recommendations regarding copyrightability of works with AI material. This is a key. If you're going to use AI, you've got to remember how you use it. You've got to note how you use it. And if you use it a certain way, you have to declare it when you register your work for copyright. So here's the keys to this. Human authorship is required. Full stop. It doesn't say or a machine. Human authorship is required. That's what their position is, and they are reinforcing that constantly with the decisions they're making. However, AI assistance does not negate copyright eligibility. So you can use AI in some form and fashion without endangering any components of your work because of not being copyrightable. AI prompts are not sufficient human control. I've got some examples I want to show you. So if you're all using AI prompts, that's AI generated and it is not copyrightable. So if you're only using prompts, remember that it's not going to be copyrightable and you're going to have to disclose it. And the examiners will decide on a case-by-case basis if it's human versus AI. But they're also recommending no changes to the law. The U.S. Copyright Office says we have sufficient laws in effect. It's just a matter of applying it to the AI situation. Now, I've been trying to think about how to talk about it in a simple way, and I never found a graphic explanation. So I'm a visual learner. So I came up with this. The image you'll ultimately see, I've actually submitted a copyright registration for the final graphic that shows it. So we're going to talk about copyrightability, and it's all about a gradient. And on one side, we have materials that are copyrightable, starting with human authored content. That is the most copyrightable content that's out there. Not copyrightable is the other extreme. So in the past, there have been 4 categories of unclaimable material. And these make sense when you look at them. Previously published materials, well, they had the copyright on that, or it lapsed into the public domain or something else, but it's already out there. Someone else has the rights for that. Previously registered materials, again, they have the more legal rights to that. Material that's in the public domain. You can, if you write a book and you put public domain materials in there, you can copyright your book, but that specific chunk of public domain content is actually unclaimable, and therefore you don't hold the copyright to that public domain information that's included in your book that has been copyrighted. And then material owned by another party. Someone gives you a photograph that they took, it's never been published, it's never been copyrighted, but they own that content. So you can't claim that because it belongs to them. Now you can get the rights to use it in your work. Now, along comes AI. Well, since March of 23, so that has not been that long ago, AI generated content or non-human authorship is unclaimable. So now we see a badge on the left, the AI generated in red, and then we see a picture of a monkey, and that was actually Slater. He set up a camera in the jungles of Indonesia so that the monkeys could take pictures, and that monkey took all kinds of selfies. He published a book full of them. PETA sued on behalf of the monkey, trying to claim the copyright on behalf of the monkey. The court said, no, monkey cannot own a copyright. So that's why I have the AI generate or non-human authorship. Stranger things have happened, maybe. So we have this extreme. We have a gradient here of not copyrightable and copyrightable. So things are going to fall out somewhere in this grayscale. So human authorship clearly is on the right, copyrightable. AI generated materials using only prompts is clearly in the not copyrightable, the way things stand today. And in the middle, we have this huge area of AI assisted materials, and that's decided on a case-by-case basis. So that is the graphic. I could not find a simple explanation like that, but that's where everything is somewhere going to fall on that diagram that we have right there in terms of whether what you use from AI is going to be copyrightable or not. Now, proposition 1, if you start with AI generated materials, it decreases the likelihood that the work's going to be copyrightable. And if it's prompts only, right now it's no copyright. Proposition 2, you start with human authored material, and here's a key phrase, the U.S. Copyright Office is the de minimis amount of AI increases the likelihood. De minimis means a small amount, but I'm going to get into a definition. So if you start with human authored material and you tweak it, then there's a greater likelihood that the end result is going to be copyrightable. If you start with AI prompts, it's not going to be.
So it's like a teeter-totter, literally. Which way is weighted will get maybe preference. Would that be right to think that way? Yeah.
It's more of where your starting point is. So if you
Okay.
start with an AI, so there is one exception to you, but if you start with AI generated content, it doesn't matter how much you tweak it, you're going to have trouble getting it through and be copyrightable. You can tweak
Okay,
it,
so
tweak it, tweak it.
all right, Dan, one of the questions that came in from Kevin was that based upon the AI assistance eligibility, do you think Amazon and Ingram Spark and Draft to Digital or any of these groups that take manuscripts to then repush them out will be changing the prompts of inquiry where you upload it? And right now the uploading is very simple. On Amazon, did you use AI? Was
Yeah,
AI used in your manuscript? It's very vague.
Yeah, I'll talk to that specifically.
You're going to come to it. All right, Kevin, it's coming.
I got a slide queued up here for you. Okay, in fact, there it is. Amazon KDP content guidelines. See, if we just paused it, if you let me go just a second, we'd have been there. So here's what it says. AI generated. Remember, AI generated, not AI assisted. AI generated. Amazon requires disclosure of text, images, and translations that start with AI generated materials, even if they're substantial edits. Now, they just say you have to disclose it. They're not disclosing it to the public yet, but that's the other few that may fall. So right now you have to disclose it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, and they find out, they can yank your book. Period. Full stop. Right. AI assisted content, no disclosures required. Again, it's this whole de minimis amount. If you're only using a small amount, well, I keep saying that word. What does it actually mean? Here's a key principle of de minimis. Would the AI generated materials be copyrightable if it had been created by a human author? So let's say you use AI to write a 12-line poem, and you're only using prompts. Write me a poem about Tommy the Tomato in 12 lines. That is AI generated, and that would not, the entire thing would be created. And if I had written that poem, it would have been copyrightable, and therefore it would not be de minimis. So so that is actually AI generated. So if it's not copyrightable if a human did it, then no disclosure. But if it could be copyrighted if a human did it, then that's yes, and then you have to disclose it because that's not a small amount, even though it may only be a 12-line poem.
Okay. So Dan, we're kind of on our honor to do it up, but
yes.
Yes. But as Jeanette wrote, how would they know if it started with AI? So I'm guessing that they're going to get more and more sophisticated that they can go out and figure out this was derived. This whole line is a duplicate from for whom the bells toll.
Yeah, it's not. Well, there's a lot of AI checker development. I've tried it a few times, and it gave me the result. It said there's a 52% probability that this content was either written by a human or a machine. So I can't figure out what the other 48% would have been created by. So I mean, it made no sense whatsoever the times I've tried it. But again, they're working on the whole thing about being able to detect AI in there, but it's not there yet. Again, a lot of this stuff is only a couple of years old, so we're still in the infancy of this whole thing. As powerful as it is, we're just beginning down this path.
Okay, so Kevin now has thrown something on the table for you, Dan. He says something more specific. He says if he gave ChatGPT specific instructions on what he wanted for the book cover, that in prompting it, I'm going to just say that's the prompt.
Yeah.
And it came back with its first version, and then I'm Kevin now. We went back and forth until he finally has something he can give now to a cover designer to create for him. So Kevin, are we talking about an image or a book cover design? How does he respond to the AI generated content here?
Okay, so I've got you covered, Kevin. Just keep your seatbelt tight. I'm
Oh God,
actually
we got another slide coming. Another slide's coming, Kevin.
lots of slides, Kevin. So hold tight. Promise.
Okay,
Here's
and
an
it is a
example.
book, and he's talking about putting an image on a book cover.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I'll talk more about this. There are a lot of details I'll get into. So things that are okay is like minor editing, formatting, spell check, Grammarly. If you don't get into the heavy use of Grammarly, if you're just checking words and all that, would be fine. Simple image tweaks and audio enhancements are fine. Short names, phrases, titles, facts, brainstorming. Here's some, so you can look at generating character names, inspiration, plot ideas, and all those kind of dialogue, scenes, outlines. All those are okay. It's a small amount, so they're not crafting the language that you have. So here's some examples. Again, the human authorship, the spell checker would be over on the copyrightable side. In the middle, there's some different AI platforms that you might be using, and it depends on how much you use. So it's gray. There's a huge gray area in this whole thing about AI assisted. And then at the end, ChatGPT, again, you can use ChatGPT in a lot of different ways, but it's at its extreme when it's prompts only. Uh, Again, it's not going to be copyrightable. Now, here's some examples, and this is where an answer will come up to Kevin. So one of these that's working its way, and it may eventually make it to the Supreme Court, is Thayer. He actually created an AI platform and created this image, and he's been taking it through the courts, and he keeps losing, and he keeps losing all the way through. So that's been the U.S. Copyright Office said it's prompts only, therefore no, it is not copyrightable. This next one, Alan, he's done kind of what Kevin was asking. He used over 600 prompts to tweak that image that he used. And Midjourney is the AI platform that he used. And the U.S. Copyright Office is still saying, no, it doesn't matter, Alan, how many times you put a prompt in, it's still a prompt. And therefore, it's not copyrightable. Now, here's one that starts getting closer into it. It's a book. Now, some of these people like Alan and so forth, they're testing the U.S. Copyright Office. And here's another one that's she's been testing it out. So she actually did a graphic novel. The U.S. Copyright Office initially granted copyright and then realized, wait a minute, you didn't create all these images and all this stuff that's in there. So even her book cover is AI generated. So her book cover there is not copyrightable because it was generated by an AI platform. So what did they exclude? All the artwork generated by artificial intelligence. That's not copyrightable. So you can take that cover right there and actually slap it on your book because it's not copyrightable. Now, what is the basis of her claim? Well, they said the text inside the graphic novel, those are her words, that's copyrightable. But they also gave her copyright for the selection, coordination, and arrangement. So you'll see that a lot in these. So she put together the AI graphics inside, so she got recognition for that. And that's the same thing in my slide presentation, is I actually have that, and that'll show up in just a few minutes. Now here's another one, and this gets a little closer to Kevin's question. So the image on the right, she actually drew this out. So Castanova actually did this, and I contacted her and got permission to use these images. The one on the left is what she actually created using the AI platform. So you can see there's similarities between the two, but they're vastly different. The U.S. Copyright Office decided that the materials excluded in this is any non-human expression. So anything that AI generated, like the roses and the nose and the lips and the chin and all that, that's not copyrightable. But her original 2D artwork, which was that black and white drawing, if you will, that is copyrightable. And they also put a little note. So this is something you'll see occasionally. There's a note on the bottom that gets further into the details. So when you're looking at whether something, what is copyrightable, it's getting harder to tell what's actually copyrighted and what isn't. I couldn't tell from that picture what was hers and what was AI's. So I just got permission to use it. And here's one though that is testing the whole system uh, for that. It's a really bizarre picture that's in there. It's called a single piece of American cheese, and the AI of this company called Invoke actually his submission was documentation starting with the very first keystroke that was input, and it shows there's a video showing that entire image being created in there. And copyright has been awarded on that. So the material is excluded. There's 2D artwork, AI generated image components. So if you look at the stained glass pieces and the noodle hair and the cheese on the top of her head, the lips, the eyeball in the middle of the forehead, all that. Now, the basis of the claim, though, is the selection, coordination, and arrangement. This one is one that illustrators and graphic artists are really going to be interested in because you combine all the features of an AI platform with something like a Photoshop on steroids. Because if you use Photoshop, you can take a pen or a brush and you can paint a color. Well, in this one, you can actually paint with melted cheese. So if you see that melted cheese on the top of the head there, he actually was painting without using like a brush like you would in Photoshop. So that one is testing the whole system, and he rearranged the pieces of the stained glass and the colors and the shapes and everything else. So there's a lot of manipulation, even though he was in an AI platform. So this is a first. This is the first AI generated image that got copyrightability. So here's our own. This is our slide presentation. So I did file for that one after the second generation, and I received it. That's what a certificate of registration looks like if you've never seen one. Materials excluded. Well, the pre-existing content. So if I use public domain, if I use artwork, photographs, anything like that, that's not included in my slide set that got the copyright protection. Text and artwork generated by AI. So the images you see are not copyrighted, like the image of a single slice of cheese, somebody else owns copyright. So it's not copyrighted in my slide set. What's the basis of the claim? My narrative, because it was a recording that I submitted, all my words, like my words today, were created by me and they're copyrighted. And then in text and the slides. Now, I have a photograph in here I'll show you in a minute. So my photograph that I took is actually copyrighted in the slide set. And then the compilation of the artwork generated by AI. So it's similar to what Casanova got in terms of the way I put together the unclaimable content in the slide set is still copyrighted the way I put them together. Now, part 3, AI's impact on creative industries. Ease of generation. Details of the prompt matter greatly. So here's one. So I said, create a stylized black and white abstract illustration, man playing a saxophone, and that's what ChatGPT created. And then I changed the word to colorized, same exact prompt, and that's what it created very quickly. So how much creativity went into that on my part? And that's the test. Well, it took less than a minute. It took about 15 seconds to create that image. It cost me 0. So time and effort on my part wasn't there, and the creativity wasn't there either. What are some issues? It can be difficult to get what you want. A lot of times I'll put prompt at like Kevin said, I'll put prompt after prompt after prompt, and it's still making mistakes and spelling and blah, blah, blah. But it can be very difficult to get what you want. So in Kevin's case, he's going to turn it over to a designer because he got ballpark close, and he's going to get somebody to actually create the artwork. And he can tell him how to tweak it more easily than he can the AI platform. This does lead to the loss of income and credit from artists, illustrators, and designers. However, I see AI as a tool. A tool can be used for good, it can be used for harm. You can use a hammer to build a house, you can use a hammer to tear down a house, but it's still a hammer. So it's a matter of it's here, it's a matter of learning how to use it effectively and without minimizing any infringement on anyone else's works. And creativity and originality can suffer, and you see that a lot about books that are being churned out by AI. They look like they were churned out by AI. But creativity and originality is missing. Derivatives. Now, we talked about derivatives earlier. So So think about this. AI platforms are trained on existing content. So like I say, there's a bunch of apples out there somewhere, and a bunch of donuts and everything else. So this is a derivative of a lot of those other pieces that have been put together. And they've incorporated that into that image. Artisans and illustrators, again, view this as infringement and plagiarized. If I took the pictures of the donuts and I show a picture of the donut, it looks just like those donuts, you know, I would feel justified that they had infringed my work. So that's a real issue, and that's what's making its way through the courts as we speak. Now, so I ask AI, I check on AI all the time. I ask it, I think I'm even asking if it lies. And it says sometimes it's not accurate. So what the response was. But anyway, so I asked AI, I asked ChatGPT, did you use somebody else's image to create this one? And I underlined it in red. It said it was created combining patterns and elements in the model learned. So it's saying, no, I did not copy anybody's specific artwork for that. But I don't know if it lied or not. Art. Now, I mentioned a photograph. So I took a picture last fall of some carrots I had out in the back garden there, and I told ChatGPT my prompt was create an oil painting, the attachment and style of Vincent Van Gogh. Oh. And that may be what Kevin's doing. It's tweaking, and it's doing and prompts to tweak his image even more. Now that's what it spit out. I don't know about you, but I kind of like that. Not in my wildest dream could I paint that myself. I just don't have the skill. But look what it did. It knows there's a hand there. There's a sleeve on the hand. There's carrots in different colors. There is a stone wall. There's grass. So it broke down the photograph that I submitted, and it pulled out all of those pieces, if you will, and put it together and creating that new image. Now, my photograph on the left is copyrighted by way of it was published in the PowerPoint presentation. The image on the right is not mine. It was generated by ChatGPT, and it is not copyrightable, no matter what I want to do. Audio. Now, this runs into people with audio books, and this is around across this with Apple. So Apple is now offering digital narration. This goes back to the very first report that I had mentioned in there about using other people's voice. So this could lead to a significant shift in audiobook production. But so there's raising questions about human narrators, if you will. Apple only had 2 American voices in December. Just had a man and a woman that was American English. This one just came out on the 9th. Now, there are some timing issues. I have not talked about philosophical, and I have not talked about politics. This is as close as I'm going to get. This is what happened over 3 days. On May the 8th, the head of the Library of Congress was fired. She had hired the head of the U.S. Copyright Office. On the 9th, this publication came out, and on the 10th, the head of the U.S. Copyright Office was fired. End of conversation. So what Part 3 says, it was supposed to be the report that assigns liability for copyright infringement and all those kind of things. To me, it fell well short of the mark. It's heavy reading. It's 113 pages with 588 footnotes. I read all the content. I did not read all the footnotes, but part of it is heavy reading. But it gives a good explanation of how AI breaks up content and assigns values to it so that it can find it later. So anyway, so here's one of the positions it took. The copying involved in AI training threatens significant potential harm in the market or the value of copyrighted works. Page 73. Here is the essence of it, though. The U.S. Copyright Office expects some uses of copyrighted works will qualify for fair use and some will not. They are leaving it up to the courts to decide whether it's going to be fair use or not. And that's all they could do. They're not a legislative body. They're simply following whatever rules and regulations and laws that are out there. They can't make up the laws themselves. And as of the 19th, there were 39 open AI cases. And there's a summary. So here's the example. I used Perplexity to generate a summary. And a lot of these cases have been combined, but you'll notice in the chart, OpenAI is a target of a lot of lawsuits that are out there. And I noticed that Musk is even suing OpenAI. He's one of the lawsuits that are out there. But there are a lot of others that are in the mix as well. Now, I'm starting a tally. So I've got four more presentations queued up over the next couple of months. I'm going to keep a tally of court cases. So far, there's only been one decided, and that was decided the Ross case. They decided against Ross, so they lost that. So it's one copyright infringement. There are 39 yet to be decided. So far, none have been decided in fair use. So this is going to be a graphic that I'll update every time I do a presentation. Questions?
Okay, yeah, we do. Yeah, and Kevin, I think this is Kevin coming back again. But if you if this is me asking, if you're coming back with some concoction that is created, let's take your carrots. You know, your carrots. You had the original, then you did the the Picasso knockoff of them. None of that is copyrighted. Right. So, but let's say you took, maybe I just answered my question. You took the Picasso carrots and you used it somehow in an image on your cover, amongst other things that you created yourself, without the help of AI. Does that one little image then eliminate the possibility of copywriting a book?
The cover is a separate item from the book itself. So if you're filing a copyright registration and you want the cover copyrighted, you have to file a separate registration. So
Well, how many of you knew that one out there? Right. So
and most covers are not copyrighted, because when you look at it, the fonts that you use are copyrighted by somebody else. You cannot copyright the font unless you create your own font. So if you use a picture of the author that's in there, well, whoever took the picture of the author has the copyright on that. So it's the artwork on the cover that would be copyrightable. So you would file a separate copyright registration for the artwork that's used on the cover. Now, AI generated that artwork in Kevin's example. If he stopped and only used the AI generated, even if he used the 600 plus prompts that Alan used, it's not copyrightable. However, if he takes his final result and he submits it to a graphic artist, and a graphic artist takes pen to paper or Photoshop or whatever else and creates using his or her own hand to make those marks on the screen, then that image is potentially copyrightable, because they use the AI platform generated images as a model, if you will, as an idea. It did not, as long as they do not take the AI generated image and bring it into Photoshop and start tweaking it, that's where it gets in the gray area. So if they start from scratch without using the AI as kind of the layer one, if you will, and tweaking over that. So again, keep in mind what you're starting from. You can look at it and create your own, and that probably is going to be copyrightable.
All right, so everyone, I think one of the real takeaways here is that your cover is one entity you consider copywriting, and what's between the covers, the back and the front cover, is a totally different animal. So that just really, that kind of thinking, positioning, Dan, tells me that the questions that are coming from, for example, Amazon is the primary one that asks, has got to separate them and not put the whole body together. Was this part done with assistance, and was this part done with assistance? I mean, I'm kind of just thinking here. All right, so Jeanette asks if she submits an outline and a chat GPT provides some content for researching, I then go and rewrite it. Is this copyrightable?
Well, again, she's using it for research. I use it for research all the time, fact checking. As long as you don't copy those words that AI generated for you, it's like doing any kind of paraphrasing. You know, if you're looking at somebody else's quote and you don't want to get permission for quote, that's the advice I have is read whatever it is you're looking at. Go make a cup of tea, sit down and enjoy it. Come back, don't look at it again, and write what you remember. So that's kind of the same advice I guess I would use for the AI generated. You don't want to copy it. That's the key. Verbatim. You don't want to copy it verbatim.
So if you're coming up with something, you get this really cool idea
Yeah.
from AI, and then you walk over to your cover designer and let him or her let their brains go to work. It becomes a prompt for them because they're going to create something new. Am I thinking this way?
Yeah, yeah. The
Okay.
prompt or the question or the description. Again, the human being is actually creating the image. By the way, ideas are not copyrightable. So AI can generate all the images in the world, and you can use those ideas. But again, you're crafting the words and you're formulating the ideas. So it's the human involvement that you're looking for, and not just wordsmithing something that AI spit out.
hmm So everyone, get your questions in. Laura, I see your hands raised, but I don't see any question in here. Help me out. So if I
By the
see
way,
anything.
I don't see any audience. I'm just looking at my Q&A screen here. So
Right.
yeah, which
I'm
has
I think we're answering them as we go along here.
yeah. Okay.
We kind of kept up with it, which is pretty good.
I told you I talk fast. So oh, you did. You said I talk fast.
You told me. I just
Yeah.
repeat what you told me. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions, anybody?
So
All right.
maybe I
So
do a
Laura,
summary. I do a summary maybe.
you can. Laura says she's gonna. So Laura, you gonna submit a question for me? She's just figured out how to submit, she said. So we've got that. Maybe that was her question. Not
Part of
sure. Yeah.
part of what I
Mhm.
forgot to say, Judith, at the beginning is that
Mhm.
the audience is going to have more questions at the end than they have at the beginning. Because with AI particularly, you don't know what you know until you know that you don't know. So
Mhm.
there's so much, and every time I go online, I'm finding something new. So this is a fast moving target that's out there.
So, and now I'm going to go back to a slide. Um, and I am going to say that with the day we had a librarian there, the copyright, head of the copyright, she's gone. What do you think is going to happen here?
That's a political question.
Okay.
I avoid politics, so I'm just trying to state the facts.
Okay, well, vote pop. Okay. So
To
Laura,
me,
okay,
it's scary
Laura
to me.
asked, it's very scary to me too, Dan. All right, Laura
Yes.
says, I've seen some instructional videos for the newest versions of Photoshop and Illustrator, which now incorporate some form of AI tools. All right,
Yeah.
so I guess maybe the question is, so that's the statement. The question is, should I be using Photoshop and Illustrator?
Again, it's a tool. Now, I forgot to add something in here. So one of the things, if you're using, let's say you start with a manuscript and you're tweaking it using
Mm-hmm,
Grammarly, for example.
mm-hmm,
One of the things that I advise people to do is keep records. So I would just do the before and after, and then you could always run it through comparing the type changes and see what AI actually changed. So I would keep a good paper trail if you're using AI content in any way, shape, or form. One of the other nice things about Perplexity and I think ChatGPT has as well, it actually creates a library of every prompt that you put in there. So you can go back, images you created. So it does some good record keeping for you. So I would keep track of those things. And yeah, you don't know if you're going to have to come back later and share some of this information with the copyright examiner. Uh, when I filed the submission on this one, I actually ended up online live with the copyright examiner looking at slides in the slide set. He has to give me an example of X, and I would give him an X. So I didn't have the language at that time to actually describe how I had used AI generated and AI assisted content. I now have that language and that little gradient illustration that I used would help me explain that a lot easier today. But I didn't have it at the time. He spent a couple of hours trying to pull out of me what I had done and how I'd used AI, and now I could answer that a lot more easily. So keep good notes.
So document. That's what we were
Yes.
saying here. All right. So Laura adds, apparently, whoever's using the newest versions of these graphic programs can utilize the AI tools to say, she says, generate a shelf of books. What would be the copyright law implications? So she's asking about if they're generating the image. We're back to that again.
Yeah, it sounded to me like you used a prompt. If you're using a prompt and that's all you used, it's not copyrightable today.
So I think the magic word here is prompt for all of you.
Yes.
What did you put into prompt to create it? Also, it's imperative to understand the difference between AI generated and then AI assisted.
Absolutely.
Two different animals that we've got going on here.
Yep. So maybe my diagram explained it very, very simply. I struggled in the previous presentation trying to explain the concept. Part of it is because I hadn't quite grasped it myself.
Okay, so let's verbally go through. Jeanette's asking, and Laura's just saying that in the tool she used, it was Adobe or something, Creative Pro with Adobe, that it's not saying anything about whether software documents this AI usage. And I'm going to tell you, they won't. If you're getting it, if it's a tool that's being used, and today that's coming from any of these things, AI is in play. I think you need to understand that. So now we're going to go back to the prompt. So let's go back to defining the difference between AI generated and AI assisted, Dan.
I am sliding back through here.
All right, so while you're on the prowl looking.
Okay, I don't know if that's, did they have another one in mind or?
Another question while you look? Marion is asking. Laura says they may think they're nuclear because an artist is directing the process. I don't think so, Laura. Okay, so Marion is asked while you're looking here. She had 4 letters from professional companies sent to me, scanned, and then summarized by ChatGPT into an outline. If that summary was used in a book, would it be copyrightable?
If you directly quoted the summary, let's say the summary was a full page or whatever else, that would have to be disclosed as AI generated content, and that would be unclaimable. Now, that does not mean the rest of the book is, the rest of the book would be copyrightable. It's just that one piece. So it's no different than, Judith, I get a photograph from you and I put it in my book and I get permission from you. My book is still copyrighted, but your picture is not included in my copyright because you own the copyright. In this case, AI generated it, and AI is not a human being, so it cannot hold the copyright on it. So again,
let's talk about let's go back to my photo. You're going to use my photo in your book, and you want to copyright that. And so, are you going to pay me to get permission to use my photo?
It depends on whether you charge me or not. And a lot of times, we do copyright clearance all the time. So, I've cleared thousands of items over the last 15 years, if you will. And some rights holders will give you permission gratis, and some will charge you an arm and a leg. So it just depends on the copyright holder and what you're wanting to use it for. But this is one of the things where I don't ask for forgiveness. I ask for permission, because forgiveness may come with a hefty price tag if you're not careful. So if it's copyrighted, to me, I go get permission, or I use it differently, but and I won't infringe and I won't plagiarize what it is. So the point with your photograph in my book is still copyrightable. I just can't claim your photograph as part of what I'm copyrighting because you already have copyright for it. So AI is just another, I call it the fifth element, if you will. It's just another type of unclaimable content. If you put all kinds of things from the public domain in your book is copyrightable, but the public domain pieces are not. And you have to disclose that when you submit a certificate for registration application. So you have to disclose the unclaimable parts. And AI is the fifth element of unclaimable parts.
Okay, so one of the reasons why we copyright is to protect our work. And if someone lifts it, takes it, plagiarizes it, uses it as a movie basis or whatever, that we can seek damages. Is that correct?
Yes. Oh, I'm glad you. Oh, I'll leave this one up here. I'm glad you pointed it out because I used to have a slide on that. I've had to cut out slides because there's more new stuff. You want to do so. You create a book, you publish it.
Mhm.
Within 90 days of publishing that book, you want to submit an application to register the copyright. That 90 days is a key number because you get extraordinary damages, if you will, if you do it within that 90-day window. Otherwise, you have to prove that you suffered harm because somebody took your stuff. So if you want to bring a lawsuit, you have to have it registered and you have to have the certificate. But you want to file within 90 days of a work actually being published. So that is a key, 90 days, remember.
Okay, you're showing something on Amazon. Did you go back and pull this one up for a reason?
Well, we were talking about Amazon earlier, talking about what you have to disclose. So again, right now, the only thing with Amazon, and it doesn't matter what's the cover. So if the cover is AI generated, I would just say that the cover is AI generated and whatever's inside is AI generated. You're simply telling them right now. Later on, I suspect Amazon will start disclosing that something is AI generated or human generated or something, but they're not there yet. But again, this stuff is also new as it's unfolding. But yeah, I was looking for another slide. I probably just need to get out of the. I'm not sure what will happen, Judith. I go not full screen. Is that going to mess
We
up
can
the
do
system?
that, and we can do full screen. We can just talk. All right, so Marion, on these 4 letters you got from companies, I'm not sure if they're about your books, about a product, about something you did a query for. I'm unclear on that, but it could be best instead of letting AI summarize them, why don't you do it if you're worried about that? All right, Jeanette feels your side provided a clear definition.
Pardon me?
Jeanette just put up a little note saying she thought the slide you found was clear.
Oh, okay. Proposition 1, Proposition 2. Okay.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Oh,
So,
okay. Marion's not worried. She's just curious. Okay.
oh, okay.
All right. Any other questions any of you have for Dan?
Just
All
remember,
right.
AI is a tool. So learn
It's a
how to
tool.
use the tool, learn how to use it effectively. You can benefit from it. I just recommend you don't abuse it. Don't abuse anybody else's stuff when you're using it. Now, that's the hard part, finding out how other people's stuff has been used by the AI platforms. And the courts are going to decide that,
Okay, so
unfortunately.
Dan, you made a comment before we close off that you copyrighted your slide deck here.
Yes.
Um, so what's the cost to slide to do that? How many hundreds of dollars does it, and why would you be concerned like someone could lift your slides for that and take it and do a presentation on their own based on your material? Is that
Yes. Yes. And if they did
yeah,
that, I would sue them for copyright infringement. Now, we would
got
go
it?
back to the subject of derivative. So I
Mhm.
submitted the recording of a presentation I did on April the 8th. Now, this has been modified by about 30%. The slides are different. 30% of the slides are different here than in that one. So basically, this slide deck that you just saw is a derivative of the one that I have copyright registered.
Oh.
So that's another good example of derivative because content changed.
Okay, so Ellen is asking, Ellen, the reason why you want to get your book registered within 90 days after it's available for publication, that if someone does the naughty and takes your material and use it, you increase your ability, if you are successful in a copyright infringement, of getting triple damages.
It's $150,000 if you win. Plus, within the 90 days, they have to pay your attorney's fees and court costs as well as paying the fine. So that's why 90 days is critical.
So it's not a flat $150,000 for copyright infringement.
$150,000 is possible, yes.
That is the max that you could win
Yes, per infringement.
per infringement. Okay, now I'm gonna be realistic. Why would anyone even bother to sue for that amount? Because you could spend $150,000 proving your case.
Because if you win if you do it within 90 days, if you win, the person you're suing has to pay your attorney's fees.
I don't know if it's worth all the energy drain for that.
Oh, yeah, that's I understand that too. There is a small claims court, and I have not been following that. So there is a way where an individual could actually bring a copyright infringement case, and you can actually file once you discover it. But again, the settlements of those are much smaller than that, and I don't know that they include attorney's fees and all of that. But there is another option. There's a small claims court.
There is a small claims. It's much more efficient. It's settled it's very quickly, but and I can't remember the amount of money in there.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Well, it's at least $7,500 if I remember correct. All right, so one last Kevin question was, does it make sense to register your book with the Library of Congress along with your copyright?
Yeah, the LLC is a different animal. It's apples and bowling balls. So LLC, you need that LLC for your book to get it into the distribution systems and everything else. So
and libraries and let me just say about the LCCN, and most people are going to get the PCCN first, get the pre-assigned, and then it converts to the official number. I don't know why they quite do it that way, but you can get it, and it's like your book's social security number, and I just think it's a good idea to do it.
Yes, it's an identifier. It's your unique book in the whole history of books. That's yours.
Yes, and so I would go about and do it, and before I go off at claims for copyright, I'm going to see if I can find something copyright infringement, small claims court. Let's see. Well, it says ask a copyright lawyer online. Wouldn't you just love that one, huh? Oh, so you can actually put your questions in, and a lawyer will come up and say hello.
And that's an AI lawyer, right? Not a human lawyer.
Yes, and that is. So on the copyright.gov website, there is information on the small claims court, and you can go up to, here we go, $30,000.
Okay, yeah, that rings a bell now.
All right, so that may be worth your while, everybody. I mean, to remember that when if someone is taking your stuff and run with it, because I did have a huge copyright infringement that involved McGraw-Hill. I chose to just have the lawyer send a cease and desist and not go after them because I knew that it wasn't a battle I wanted to take on. And they have deep pockets and the checkbook. And part of the thing that I would have to prove is how many books they had sold and cheated me out of, including foreign rights that they were selling and cheated me out of not even giving me and telling me. when I was under contract with them. So I decided I just tell people not to deal with McGraw-Hill. That's the way I deal with it.
Yeah. And that's why that 90 days is important. You don't have to prove that you lost revenue. So that's
Yes.
good. Statutory damages. Couldn't think of
Yes.
the term well.
Exactly. All right, Dan, anything else you want to add on before we say adios to these wonderful people?
Well, it's stay tuned for what's happening in there, and it's a moving target. That's the thing
Yeah.
about it. And we're in this is a pioneer days of all of this. I
Yeah.
equate it to when the internet first went live in 1994, and look at all the changes. So there are going to be ways that we can figure out how to put checks and balances on all of this. It's not there yet, but those are in the hopper as well. So all these problems that we see, there are also people working on potential solutions. So I see AI as a great tool. I hope I use it appropriately.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to do another add-on because Dan, you triggered me. You know, I spent over 40 years on the road speaking, slides, all that. Never did I copyright. And I knew bloody well people lifted them and used them and all that. You could create maybe an annuity for yourself if you're out there speaking and you have got, you know, your intellectual property is being put out, your presentation of your slides, everything else that you do on them and the content within them. You may want to consider protecting it.
Yeah, and one reason why I did it, I wanted to see what the submission process was like. So it really informed me about this whole thing about the copyrightability. So it was a test case for me, and that's the main reason why I filed the registration, is to find out how I was supposed to disclose this stuff. And it worked. It really helped me understand it.
So filing a copyright is far cheaper than trademarking. Big difference between the two.
Totally different. By the way, the copyright detective is a federally registered trademark, and I do cease and desist when I see anybody using that. There are 42 or 46 or 48 classes, I don't remember. Each class is $650. So filing a trademark is mucho expensive.
Very expensive. So, all right, everyone, we'll bid you good night. Thank you for being with us. We will convert this to a recording and you will get it. No late, what is today? Wednesday? Most likely you'll have it tomorrow. So watch it. It'll be coming directly from my email, judith@briles.com. Okay?
Thank you very
All right.
much, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
And we're still there, aren't we?
I'm trying to, yeah, I'm trying to. Here we go.